Hey everybody, a little while ago I posted a video featuring this knife, the Stryker Defender tool by Tops Knives, and a couple of viewers left comments questioning my assessment and the overall functionality of the knife. So in this video I'm going to do it all again, and I'm going to address those comments specifically. Throughout the video, I think you're going to see why I believe that the Stryker Defender tool is hands down the best outdoor fixed blade belt knife on the market today. And if you like this video, stick around for the end, because I'll show you a few ways that I made this already awesome knife even better. Let's get to it. Okay, here's a quick comparison between the Stryker Defender tool and two of the most popular outdoor fixed blades on the market today. On the left is the Mora Garberg. This is the carbon steel knife here. The Garberg used to be my everyday carry belt knife, but when my job changed, my needs changed, and I knew that I needed a much more robust knife than the Garberg. I just didn't trust the Garberg anymore with my new job. And you can see the clear difference between the two. The Stryker Defender tool is easily 3 times the knife the Garberg is. Alright, on the right, you've got the very recognizable tracker, also by Tops. This is the T1, the largest version that they make. It's fairly similar to the Stryker Defender tool, but this tracker is humongous. It is clearly not a belt knife designed for everyday carry. Other than that, features are similar. They're both 1/4 of an inch thick steel. They both feature that very prominent, well-known toothy spine, but I do prefer the spear point over pretty much any other point, especially the clip point on the Garberg. I prefer the Rocky Mountain tread handle over the classic tracker style handle, and basically it's the fact that the tracker's just not meant to be a belt knife that you're going to carry everywhere your hip goes. So there's a quick little comparison for you between the Stryker Defender tool and two of the most popular fixed blades out there. Let's get busy. Okay, here's a side-by-side screenshot of the two comments that viewers left. You can pause the video here if you're interested in reading them in their entirety, but they basically say that the knife is inadequate for outdoor use and I wasn't using the knife correctly in my previous video. Friends, these two comments just scream inexperience and tunnel vision. They're probably the result of watching 1,000 hours of knife review videos on YouTube while gaining very little or no actual hands-on experience with the knife in the field. So here's a word of caution. Do not allow yourselves to become limited by what you see on social media. Listen, your skill and proficiency with your knife depends solely on how you train with your knife, not on what Joey Bag of Donuts tells you on YouTube. The vast majority of outdoor knife review videos are going to show batoning a piece of wood about this size. They're going to set it down and they're going to take their knife and they're going to baton through that limb or branch. If they're really motivated, they'll grab a piece that's maybe 4 or 5 inches in diameter and they'll baton through that and they'll try to sell you the knife. In my previous video, I was using the Stryker Defender tool to baton a fairly large piece of either cedar or pine, whatever it was. it was probably 10, maybe 12 inches in diameter. And one of the viewers commented and said, that knife is too small for that. It's only meant to baton pieces maybe like this big around or something. Not for sure what he had in mind, but that's most likely what he was talking about. Listen, batoning is a technique that we use to make little stuff out of big stuff. And it does not matter how big the big stuff is. Your knife blade does not have to span the entire diameter of the material that you're batoning.
Your knife blade does not have to span the entire diameter.
You're only trying to make little stuff out of big stuff. Here I have a piece of cedar that's probably close to 4 feet long, and it's a good 9 inches in diameter. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Try that with more Garberg. That log is a piece of western red cedar. But how does this knife perform on oak? Well, unfortunately, I don't have a 9-inch diameter log of oak, but I do have a 5-inch piece of oak. Check this out. This piece of oak is clearly too large of diameter for this Stryker Defender tool to baton all the way through as if it was an axe. But as I said a moment ago, it is not necessary that the length of your blade spans the entire length of the material that you're batoning. If I'm going to baton a piece of material that I can't just split in half, I'm just going to attack the edge. Just get after the edge. All you're trying to do is remove small material. Making small stuff out of big stuff with a Stryker Defender tool. So, can you make little stuff out of big stuff with this Stryker Defender tool? Of course you can. It's a 1/4 inch slab of heat-treated steel with a spear point on it. Of course you can make little stuff out of big stuff. One of the viewers said that the toothy spine here is too short to be an effective saw. Well, two things about that. One, he's probably right. It is too short to be an effective saw. But the other thing is that this toothy spine was never meant to be a saw. You can't show me a single saw blade that is cut like that. The teeth on this Stryker Defender tool, or the Tracker, or the SXB, are not designed to be a saw. They are intended to be used to grind material out of limbs or whatever the case it is. You're making cordage notches, or you're grinding up small material for a tender nest, as I showed earlier. It's not a saw. So that one viewer is correct. It doesn't function very well as a saw. Enough said about that. One of the comments pointed out that pretty much at a 1/4 inch thick, the Stryker Defender tool is really no good for slicing. Well, I think I demonstrated slicing well enough with those fatwood curls. And listen, I'm not very good at making feather sticks, you know, those really curly feather sticks. I don't find it necessary to do that, but that's besides the point. How well your knife slices is a direct function of how sharp it is, meaning the grind that you put on it. Now, this knife still has the factory edge on it. Well, not factory edge, I've sharpened it several times, but I've tried to maintain that Scandinavian grind on it, which is not a very sharp edge. If you sharpen your knife with a different grind, it's going to be better at slicing. But as you saw earlier, when I used these serrated teeth, it sliced just fine and made those curls for the feather sticks just fine. And I'm not very good at feather sticks. Well, if you've made it this far in the video, then hopefully you have seen that the Stryker Defender tool performs exceptionally well, especially as an everyday carry belt knife. Now, I'm going to show you a few simple modifications that I have made on my personal knife that make this Stryker Defender tool even better. Okay, up until this point in the video, I've been using this knife to demonstrate the batoning and the grinding and all of that. This is my wife's knife. For all intents and purposes, it's factory. Okay, she's used it, I've sharpened it a couple times, whatever. This is the knife that I carry on my hip everywhere I go, every time I go. What I want to show you now is a few very simple modifications that I've done to my personal knife that turn this knife into an even more functional beast. Everybody knows that the Tracker by Tops is a really good chopper. It's not as good a chopper as the Kukri, not as good as the SXB, but it's a really good chopper. It's got that big fat belly right here. And if you look at this knife, which is factory really, you might look at that and say, well, that's not a very good chopper. I think I demonstrated that it will chop just fine. But when I was chopping earlier in the video, I think I was using this knife here. This is my personal belt knife. The difference between this knife and this knife is this little piece of paracord right here. I call this a pinky lanyard or a finger lanyard. And All it is a lanyard that I put my finger into, my pinky, and that allows me to get a lot more throw into that knife. I can do just as much chopping with this Stryker Defender tool and this pinky lanyard here as I can with this tracker. By putting that pinky lanyard on, I can get probably at least 5 times the chopping power out of this blade as I can without the lanyard on it. My wife's doesn't have a lanyard on it for some reason. The next modification that you might notice that I have made to my personal knife is this draw blade here. As a rule, I typically don't like serrations on a blade, and the Stryker Defender tool comes with this 2-to-1 serration pattern. That's a good serration pattern, but I just don't like it, and it's not practical for me to have those serrations on there. I don't use them for cordage. If I'm outdoors, I don't want to have to worry about sharpening those serrations. I would much rather have this draw blade with that small quarter round, just like the tracker has. I grinded off these serrations here, and I sharpened that up with a diamond file and a little Nicholson file, sharpen that up into a draw blade, and that is much more functional for me, and I don't have to worry about the serrations. The next really simple modification that I made to my personal knife is I grinded myself a little 90-degree bare metal area right here just so I could strike a ferro rod. Ferro rod fire starting is my second most used technique. That's the one I use if I don't have sunshine and a Fresnel lens. But the Stryker Defender tool comes with this jipping right here, and it's traction coated. It might be 90 degrees right there, it probably is, but the traction coating doesn't really work well with a ferro rod. So what I did on my knife was I grinded that jipping down, made a bare metal 90-degree edge, 2 of them actually, and that way I can strike a ferro rod on that if I can't use a solar ignition technique. Another really simple modification that I've done on my personal belt knife that I haven't done on my wife's is I changed the grind on my knife. I generally don't like a Scandinavian grind. It's just not sharp enough to do what I want to do. So I put more of a convex grind on mine, and that makes it really, really easy to shave material down, slice material. I can make feather sticks with it, kind of. I'm not NW Primate, but I don't practice feather sticks because I don't find it necessary. Anyways, listen, this is the beauty of owning something. You can do whatever you want to with it. So change it, make it yours, make it work the way you need it to. I like a convex grind on pretty much all of my knives. The last modification that I did on my personal belt knife was grind off this end of the scales, the handle, and basically produced my own extended tang. The Stryker Defender tool does not come factory with an extended tang like the Tracker Digger does, the Kumatakri does, the SXB comes with an extended tang. I love an extended tang. The Stryker Defender tool does not come with an extended tang. It just has this full tang that ends at the scales. So I grinded this part of the scales down on both sides, and I gave myself that extended tang. That allows me to stab down into that material, and I can baton straight down onto that steel without messing up these scales. Many of you will not be comfortable changing the grind on your blade, grinding off the serrations, and especially grinding off the end of your scales. And that's okay. If your knife works for you the way it is out of the box, that's perfectly fine. The Stryker Defender tool was an amazing knife. It's hands down the best fixed blade that I've ever carried. I just felt that it needed a little bit of tweaking, and I'm okay with tweaking my knife. It doesn't have to be pretty, it has to function.